Hi folks, welcome to this video in my Macbeth series. We are looking at Act 1 Scene 3 today. Now this is the second main video in this little section on Act 1 Scene 3 because there is just so much to talk about that I've broken it up into different sections. So we've already found out about some of the characters in the play. We know from Act 1 Scene 2 that Macbeth is the tragic hero who led Scotland's forces to victory against Norway. We know that Banquo is Macbeth's friend, his travelling companion, and he's kind of Macbeth's equal as well. I know we tend not to think about Banquo as being equal to Macbeth, but at the start of the play, they are spoken about almost in the same breath in a number of occasions. For example, in Act 1, Scene 2, Duncan says, "Dismay this not our captains, Macbeth and Banquo." We've also met the witches a couple of times. We met them in Act 1, Scene 1. We met them in the previous video on the start of Act 1, Scene 3. And we know that they are being presented as agents of the devil. Shakespeare's really laying it on thick that the witches are malevolent. They are presented as being different, as being unnatural, beyond human civilization, and they're also linked to the three fates of Greek mythology, which creates this sense that they are able to predict what's going to happen to Macbeth and that in some way they have control over Macbeth's destiny. Some more essential knowledge that we need for this scene then. So the first word here is skeptical, and that means not easily convinced or uncertain. The second word here is credulous, which is willing to believe what you are told. So when they hear the prophecies, Banquo is more skeptical than Macbeth, and Macbeth is quite credulous. He willingly believes what he is told, and we'll go through the reasons for that in the next video as well. If these words are new to you, pause, do a little bit of look, cover, write, check, make yourself some flashcards on these words, make sure you learn them. Don't just let this drift over you so that you forget it. Actually pause, look, cover, write, check, make sure you learn those definitions. Okay, our other bit of essential knowledge for this scene then is a quotation. In Act 1, Scene 1, the witches famously said, "Fair is foul and foul is fair." Fair means good, foul means bad. So what the witches were saying here is that what looks like it's good is actually bad and corrupt, and what looks like it's bad and corrupt and repulsive might actually be good. Essentially, things aren't what they seem. People aren't who they seem to be. Someone who looks like they're being loyal on the surface, underneath it might have some horrid imaginings. And this statement is really going to resonate in this scene for a number of reasons. Right, let's get reading then. And what you can see here is the first echo of that quotation from the witches. Macbeth says, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." Now, quite a lot of students that I teach make a mistake on this, so here's a warning for it. Macbeth did not hear the witches say fair is foul and foul is fair. There is no way that he is quoting them. He is not directly echoing them, but he's kind of unconsciously using their vocabulary, and that perhaps shows us the influence that the witches have. It's almost as if their influence is seeping out into the whole play, even affecting the characters' language. And what Macbeth means here is that, well, today's been dreadful, but it's also been good. The battle itself was horrendous, but the victory fell on us. So emotionally and in terms of the history of the day, it's been a pretty mixed bag, I suppose we could say. Then, just a little pause point for you. Thinking about these words fair and foul, just want you to stop and process what I've said to you. So brain dump everything you know about these words in the play and then start the video again when we're ready and we'll go through the rest of the extract. Okay, so then Banquo says, "How far is it Calder Forest?" As in, how far have we got to go? They're tired, they've been in battle, they want to get to Forest, which is a place of safety where the camp is. He wants to get there. And then all of a sudden he kind of stops in his speech, catches himself and says, "What are these, so withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on it?" So the witches have suddenly appeared on stage, or he's noticed that the witches are on stage already, and he describes them in a way which really emphasizes their difference, their otherness, their separation from human society. They are withered, and that adjective suggests a sense of decay, of death, of endings. Wild is something uncontrollable, untamable, a little bit animalistic perhaps, and outside of human laws and control. And in fact, Banquo then adds to this, they look not like the inhabitants of the earth. Well, to inhabit something means to live there. So here he says they don't even look like they live on the earth, and yet they're on it. So he's trying to get his head around who these witches are, what's going on. And he asks them, live you, or are you aught that man may question? You seem to understand me by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. So the witches hear him, they put their fingers on their lips, and then Banquo continues, you should be woman, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. Here, Shakespeare is introducing some ambiguity around gender that he's going to develop throughout the play. Women at this time period were expected to dress and behave in a certain way, and we know that actually those expectations weren't always easy to achieve, and these women certainly don't meet those expectations. They aren't beautifully dressed, they aren't refined, they aren't taking care of themselves, they aren't in a domestic space, they don't have children with them, they aren't kind of serving the men in their lives. Actually, these women have beards, which suggests that maybe they've got a dash of masculinity, which is unexpected, and these women are taking control of the situation, and they're going to play with the men rather than being under the control of the men. So it's really interesting the way Shakespeare plays with gender here. Macbeth says, speak if you can, what are you? And the witches do respond to Macbeth. And they say, all hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis. All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor. All hail Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter. Now we know the number 3 is a really kind of powerful number in the text, and they give Macbeth 3 prophecies. They start these prophecies with the word hail, which is a sign of respect, and then they use his name. Slightly unsettling, slightly uncanny. Macbeth hasn't used his own name. Banquo hasn't used Macbeth's name in this scene. How do they know who he is? And then they call him Thane of Glamis. Now, Macbeth's father was the Thane of Glamis. His father's recently died, so Macbeth has inherited the title. He's the Thane of Glamis. Okay, that makes sense. Thane of Cawdor. Now, in the previous scene, we discovered that the Thane of Cawdor was a traitor to Scotland, and Duncan orders the execution of this particular Thane. And then he says that Macbeth should be rewarded with the title Thane of Cawdor. Except Macbeth doesn't know any of this yet. And actually, how do the witches know about that? Because they weren't there in Act 1, Scene 2 to hear that conversation. So the witches have some kind of supernatural knowledge about what's happened. And then the third prophecy is perhaps the most startling, that shalt be king hereafter. They tell Macbeth that he's going to be king of Scotland. Now, Macbeth doesn't respond immediately, and we gather at this point that he's so overwhelmed by what the witches have said that he's struck speechless. Is he speechless because he's shocked that they've made these prophecies about him? Or is he speechless because they've tapped in to Macbeth's hidden desires that he hasn't told anybody, ambitions that he hasn't told anybody, which is to be king of Scotland? And Banquo says, good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? So why do you start? This means why do you jump? Why do you look so shocked? Why do you seem to be afraid of things that do sound so fair? And remember that quotation, fair is foul and foul is fair. And Macbeth at the start of the scene said, so foul and fair a day I have not seen. Well, here Banquo is using that word fair again. These prophecies sound fair, they sound good, they sound like something that we should be celebrating. And yet Macbeth looks like he's afraid. Then Banquo turns to the witches and says, in the name of truth, are ye fantastical, or that indeed which outwardly ye show? My noble partner you greet with present grace and great prediction of noble having, and of royal hope that he seems rapt withal. Now this word rapt means entranced, so Macbeth seems to have fallen into some kind of daydream almost now that he's heard these prophecies. He's entranced, he's been put under the witch's spell. And Banquo then wants his own prophecy, which you would, obviously. And Banquo says, to me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me. who neither beg nor fear your favours nor your hate. So he commands the witches to speak to him, and they respond to him as well, saying, hail, hail, hail. Notice that Macbeth got an all hail and Banquo just gets a hail. So they're showing slightly less respect to Banquo. But actually, the prophecy that they give Banquo is arguably a lot better than the prophecy they give Macbeth. So the first witch says, lesser than Macbeth and greater. The second witch says, not so happy, yet much happier. The third witch, thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So all hail Macbeth and Banquo. So he's going to be less important than Macbeth. If Macbeth's made king, then Banquo's obviously going to be less important than him. But in some ways, he's going to be greater than Macbeth. And in this period in history, how do you become truly great? Well, it's not just by being king, it's by being king and then your son becoming the next king and his son becoming the king after that, being the start of a line of kings. And actually, this is what the witches are prophesying for Banquo. Not that he's going to be king, but that his descendants will be a line of kings. And when this was first performed, King James I would have been sitting in the audience. And as legend has it, from Banquo's children, the line descends down to King James I. So that king is sitting right there in the audience, kind of proving that this prophecy has come true. Okay, so Macbeth then finds his voice, is able to respond, and he says, stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more. So he wants him to stay, he wants more information from the witches. And he says, by Sinel's death, I know I am Thane of Glamis. So his father was called Sinel, Sinel has died, Macbeth's inherited, that all makes sense. And then he says, but how of Cawdor, the Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief, no more than to be Cawdor. Now, there's a lot of dramatic irony here, and we'll talk more about that in the next couple of videos. But here, Macbeth thinks that the Thane of Cawdor is still alive, that he's still loyal to the king, that he still has his position in society. We as the audience know that's not true. We know that in Act 1, Scene 2, the Thane of Cawdor was found out to be a traitor, and his execution was ordered, and that his title was given to Macbeth. And then Macbeth asks them more questions here. Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence. Like, how do you know this? Where did you get your information from? Or why upon this blasted heath you stop our way with such prophetic greeting? Speak, I charge you. And then the witches vanish. I love that last line because Macbeth, as a man, as a military leader, as a Thane, thinks that he is in charge of this situation, and he gives the witches an imperative, a command, and they disobey him. And I just love that little detail that shows actually, Macbeth, you're not in charge of this situation. It's the witches who are pulling the strings here. You are just merely a puppet to their kind of supernatural power. Okay, lots of information there. So pause and summarise this scene. List 3 details about Macbeth's response to the witches, 2 details about Banquo, and 1 reason why Shakespeare includes the witches in the play. And check out the next video, which is going to be on the rest of the scene.